Like joke, June 19th came and I was on my way. 2 flights and 14 hours later, I was in Accra, Ghana. My first goal was getting through customs peacefully because I didn't have my yellow fever card and I was afraid I wouldn't be allowed to enter the country. But thankfully, I sat beside a Guinean woman and her young son who was kind enough to act as my mother at the airport. When I told her I couldn't find my yellow card, she was like, "Don't worry. My brother works at the airport. When we get down, just follow me." And I was like, "Okay." So when we got to the airport, there were 2 lines, one for Guineans and one for other nationals. I followed the woman and her son into the Guinean line, and thus began 7 weeks of outreaches, research, personal growth, and amazing new memories. Today was a 14-hour day. We left Takwa at around 8 a.m. and got back to the hotel at around 10 p.m. There was no light. My interpreter was named Jurgen, a nice young man who had an easy spirit about him. I interviewed 11 cataract patients and afterwards I did visual acuity testing. I realized the importance of language and questioned the credibility of the results I was writing on patients' papers. Both drivers on the team were also performing visual acuity tests. Other volunteers were assisting with data entry and medication or glasses dispensary. One of the optometrists, Dennis, was seeing patients and prescribing proper medication. He told me that cataracts and allergies were leading concerns for the day. The other optometrist, Ernest, was doing refractive examination and prescribing surgery, glasses, and meds. We saw over 200 patients today. So what have I learned about global health? For one, the articles and cases I read about in class are real. The health inequalities are there. The negative aspects of NGOs are also evident, even well-meaning ones like Unite for Sight have what I would consider major pitfalls. One volunteer was just completely out of line, taking it upon themselves to treat patients, applying eye drops to freeze their eyes so they could arrive at a diagnosis, despite blatant language barriers. Patients were visibly uncomfortable and confused with instructions given to them, but none questioned the doctor's authority. What made the situation worse was that people in charge completely overlooked the malpractice. How does Unite for Sight hold people accountable? It also turns out that not every volunteer had to complete Unite for Sight's pre-departure training modules. Volunteers who came for only a week were exempt from this requirement. I'm pretty sure training modules were attributes Unite for Sight proudly emphasized or used to support claims of being an NGO engaged in best practices. So damage can't be done in a week? A fellow volunteer asked one of the optometrists why more local volunteers were not used as opposed to foreigners, and the reply was something along the lines of foreigners increasing credibility and prompting more people to come out for the outreaches. That saddened me. I felt people gave up power of choice and opinion in the name of foreign care. When other volunteers introduce themselves and say they're from America, the crowd cheers. When I introduce myself and say I'm Nigerian, the cheers change into this awkward jumble of murmurs. One way I try to make sense of the lukewarm welcome I receive when people hear I'm from Nigeria is that they think I'm coming from Nigeria, which Lucy, my interpreter for the day, confirmed. Even if that was the case, it's still not okay. Why is the presence of an American more appreciated and celebrated than that of a Nigerian or fellow African? Maybe it's distrust, or maybe they think I'm not as qualified, or don't have their best interest in mind. Most people easily and readily trust Western foreigners. I would say white, but the reception is different when I tell people I'm from America, so it's not just race. Anyway, I appreciate Lucy's presence. It's a reminder that not everyone is the same. She wanted me to be the one to do her father's visual acuity test. Even though countless hours were spent working, there was always time for relaxation and fun. I spent my time off watching World Cup games outside Accra Mall, exploring Jamestown, attending weddings, shopping at the art market, washing my clothes by hand. Actually, that was a struggle. Going to dinner and hanging out in Osu, exploring different restaurants and clubbing even when the power went out. I will always find an excuse to stop by Pinocchio, which is hands down the best and fanciest gelato place I've ever been to in my life. Outreaches in Kumasi were smaller, so I had the opportunity to visit Kumasi Zoo, Manshia Palace, the Cultural Center, Kejitia Market, and try kente weaving at Bonmire Kente Weaving Village. There was never a dull moment with the Kumasi team. If I wasn't learning tree from Kisu or Prempe, we were exploring Kumasi, or arguing, or should I say debating, about religion, politics, and relationships. One particular day, on the way back from an outreach, the team got into a discussion about the role of men and women in relationships. Some of the men were adamant about women only contributing 30% at most to a relationship, whether it be financially or decision making. One even argued that a woman's contribution should be zero. So when I asked if this level of participation or contribution was also expected in the bedroom, I was quite surprised at how quickly the conversation came to a halt, with the men at a loss for words and smiling guiltily. Safe to say the females won that debate. Since volunteers were here for different lengths of time, I found myself constantly saying hello to new volunteers and goodbye to new friends. When it was my turn to leave, I couldn't believe so much had happened in just 7 weeks. I absolutely enjoyed traveling all over Ghana, meeting new people, learning about healthcare, and learning about myself. This summer gave me a lot of clarity on what I want to do in the future, academically and career-wise. It also gave me enough courage to come to terms with the fact that interacting with healthcare through clinical practice is not really what I want to do. This summer was by far one of the most eventful summers I've ever had, and I look forward to returning to Ghana one day.
My win me 10 years, me wank way back. My flop it, this be my payback. My enemies if for they got me.